Somewhere in Russia, right now, there is a plastic bag full of other plastic bags. There is a carpet on a wall on purpose. And every summer, an entire city will lose its hot water for 2 weeks, and nobody will panic. To an outsider, some of this looks strange. 10 things Russians do that quietly confuse the rest of the world, and what they actually mean. Number 1. They take their shoes off. Always. And they'll hand you slippers. Walk into a Russian home with your shoes on, and you'll feel the temperature in the room drop. In Russia, you take your shoes off at the door. Every time. And then your host will do something that startles a lot of Westerners. They'll hand you a pair of slippers. Communal ones. For your feet. If you're American, this can feel weirdly intimate, almost like being fussed over. But step back, and it's the most sensible thing in the world. Russian streets spend half the year buried in slush, mud, and road salt. The hallway isn't just an entrance, it's a border. The dirt stays there, by the door, instead of on the floor where people sit and children play. And here's what most Westerners don't realize. It's not the Russians who are the odd ones out. Shoes off is the norm across most of the snowy world: Scandinavia, Poland, Japan, Korea, Canada. In Japan, there's a whole architectural step for it, the jinkan. The guest slippers aren't an inspection. They're a welcome. It's the American keep your boots on inside that the rest of the planet finds strange. Number 2. They hang carpets on the wall. Now this one has become a full-blown internet joke. A carpet, hanging on the wall, like a painting. Foreigners see it and think, kitsch. Grandma's house. Stuck in the past. Except it was never about decoration first. It was engineering. Back in the 1960s, millions of Soviet families moved into cheap, mass-produced concrete apartment blocks. Thin walls. Cold. And you could hear your neighbor breathe. A thick wool carpet on the wall fixed 2 problems at once. It held in the heat, and it muffled the sound. It was insulation you could admire. And admire it they did, because carpets were expensive and hard to get. In that era, a good carpet could cost several months' salary, with waiting lists up to a year. Hanging it on your most visible wall was a quiet way of saying, "We made it." If that still sounds odd, remember what medieval Europe hung on its cold stone castle walls. Tapestries. For exactly the same 2 reasons: to keep in the warmth and to show off. Same idea. 500 years apart. Number 3. They don't smile at strangers. And it's not what you think. Ask a Western tourist for their first impression of Russians, and you'll often hear the same word: cold. Nobody smiles. Everyone looks so serious. But the science says something surprising. In a 2017 cross-cultural study, Russians and Americans reported almost exactly the same level of happiness. The difference wasn't how they felt. It was who they showed it to. In Russia, a smile means something. It's not social lubricant you hand out to cashiers and strangers. It's a genuine signal, safe for people you actually feel warmth toward. Smile at a stranger for no reason, and it can read as insincere or even a little foolish. There's a proverb for it. Laughter for no reason is a sign of a fool. So the American service smile, bright, automatic, for everyone, strikes many Russians as slightly fake. And the Russian neutral face strikes Americans as cold. Neither is right. They're just different rules. Here's the warm part. In Russia, a smile isn't free, which is exactly what makes it worth something. When a Russian finally smiles at you, they aren't being polite. They mean it. Number 4. They swim in a hole in the ice. In winter. On purpose. Every January, in temperatures that can drop well below freezing, hundreds of thousands of Russians line up to lower themselves into a hole cut in the ice and dunk all the way under. 3 times. From the outside, this looks completely insane. It isn't a stunt, though. It's a holy day. The date is January 19th, Epiphany, which the Russian Orthodox Church marks on the old Julian calendar. The ice hole is often cut in the shape of a cross. The water is blessed. And people dip 3 times, once for each part of the Holy Trinity. In recent years, cities have set up thousands of official sites, with handrails, wooden steps, and rescue crews standing by. It's organized, it's supervised, and it's over in seconds. One myth to clear up: a lot of people think the plunge washes away your sins. The church itself says no, it's a folk custom, not a sacrament, and nobody's required to do it. And Russia is far from alone here. In Finland, winter swimming through a hole in the lake ice, paired with a sauna, is a beloved national pastime with hundreds of clubs. The whole hot then freezing ritual, the banya and the ice, is a shared idea across the entire cold north. Russia just wrapped the biggest version of it around a church holiday. Number 5. They will never give you an even number of flowers. Here's a mistake a foreigner can make without ever knowing it. You buy someone a beautiful bouquet, a nice, round dozen roses, and you watch their face flicker. In Russia, you give flowers in odd numbers. 1, 3, 5, 7. Never even. Because an even number of flowers is what you bring to a funeral, laid on a grave, or a coffin. The idea behind it is old, older than Christianity in these lands. Even numbers are seen as a closed circle, something complete, finished, right for a life that has ended. Odd numbers are open, ongoing, still moving, right for the living and for joy. On a giant bouquet, nobody's really counting. So the rule bites hardest on the small ones, the everyday gift. And before this sounds like superstition, the West has the exact same instinct, just coded differently. In France, you never gift chrysanthemums, they're for the cemetery. White lilies red as funeral flowers across much of the Western world. Every culture has a grammar of flowers. Russians just write it in numbers instead of colors. Number 6. Every summer, the hot water just stops. Imagine your whole neighborhood loses its hot water for 2 weeks. In July, and instead of chaos, everyone just shrugs and boils a kettle. Welcome to a genuinely modern piece of Russian life. In most Russian homes, hot water doesn't come from a heater in your apartment. It comes from a giant, citywide network, district heating, built back in the Soviet years. One system, heating water for millions of people at once. And once a year, in the warm months, they shut it down, zone by zone, to pressure test the pipes and fix them before winter. Cold water keeps running the whole time. It's planned. It's announced back in April. You can literally type in your address and see the exact dates your street goes cold. It used to last up to 3 weeks. Now, in Moscow, it's usually around 10 days. So it isn't a country falling apart. It's the opposite. It's a centralized system being maintained on schedule. And it's not even uniquely Russian. Cities like Copenhagen and Reykjavik run the same kind of district heating and are proud of it. The West mostly chose a water heater in every home instead, which is why it never got this very particular summer ritual. The whole building, marking the calendar to boil water for a week. Number 7. They knock on wood and spit over their shoulder. Constantly. Compliment a Russian's child, or mention a plan you're excited about, and you might see them do something odd. Knock on wood 3 times and spit, or mime spitting, over their left shoulder. Also 3 times. To a foreigner, it can look darkly superstitious, like they're always bracing for disaster. But it comes from one very human idea: don't jinx it. The fear of the evil eye, that too much praise or too much confidence might spoil good fortune, especially around children and plans that haven't happened yet. The story goes that an angel sits on your right shoulder and a little devil on the left, so you spit to the left to shoo him off. If there's no wood nearby, people will knock on their own head with a grin. It's less about literally believing in devils and more a reflex of humility, a way of saying, I'm not going to tempt fate by bragging. And this one barely needs a mirror because you already do it. Knock on wood. Touch wood. The Italians have the malocchio, the Greeks the matti, the Turks their blue nazar charm. It's the same ancient instinct the world over. Russians just add the spit. Number 8. Before a trip, everyone sits down in silence. Here's one of the gentlest things on this list. The bags are packed, the taxi's coming, everyone's ready to go, and then someone says, let's sit for the road. And the whole family sits down, together, in silence, for a moment. The old reason is pure folklore. The pause was meant to fool the house spirit, the domovoi, into thinking nobody was leaving, so no bad luck would follow you out the door. Only good fortune goes on the journey. But the reason it survives, even in families who believe in no spirits at all, is quietly practical. It's a forced moment of calm in the most frantic 30 seconds of any trip. A beat to breathe, and to run the checklist in your head. Passports. Did we turn off the stove? Did we forget anything? Every culture has a leaving the house ritual. The sailors who won't set off on a Friday. The coin tossed in a fountain, so you'll return. Russians just formalized the best part. 1 quiet minute together, before the road. Number 9. The bag. Full of bags. Open the cupboard under almost any Russian kitchen sink, and you'll find it. One plastic bag, stuffed full of other plastic bags, folded and saved, and reused until they finally tear. A Westerner might see hoarding. It's actually a habit with a history. In the Soviet Union, a plastic bag wasn't trash, it was a small luxury. People washed them, dried them, and used them for years. A printed bag from a Western shop was practically a status symbol. The everyday carrier was the Avaska, the maybe bag, a string net that folded into your pocket and could haul a startling amount of groceries. Then the 1990s came, plastic became endless, and the habit just stayed. The reflex to save it just in case outlived the shortage it came from, and turned into a quiet ethic of not wasting things. Which is the irony worth sitting with. The whole Western world is now rediscovering this. Reusable totes, bottle deposits, zero waste. Soviet households were doing enforced zero waste decades before it was a lifestyle brand. That string bag in grandma's kitchen? It was the original reusable tote. Number 10. They vanish into the forest to hunt mushrooms. And the last one might be the most beautiful. Come late August, something pulls millions of Russians out of the cities and into the forest, young and old, city and country alike. They're going on the quiet hunt. For mushrooms. A foreigner might picture desperation or danger. It's neither. It's one of the most loved traditions there is, a whole culture of walking the woods in the autumn light, reading the forest floor, filling a basket, and carrying home enough to dry, salt, and pickle for the winter. And the knowledge is handed down. Which mushroom is a treasure and which is trouble. That's something you learn as a child, walking beside a parent or a grandparent. It's less about the food and more about the walk, the quiet, and the person who taught you. If that sounds familiar, it should. In Scandinavia, they call it the right to roam, to pick berries and mushrooms on any land. The West is rediscovering foraging as a forest-to-table trend. In Russia, it was never a trend. It's just autumn. So, 10 habits. And notice what almost none of them actually were. Not weird. Not random. Behind every one there's a real winter, a piece of history, or a very particular kind of sincerity. The belief that a smile, a gift, a moment before a journey, should mean something. That's the thing about looking at another country up close. The stuff that seems strangest from a distance is usually the stuff that makes the most sense once you're standing inside it. If this gave you a little more understanding, and maybe made you want to take your shoes off, subscribe, and stick around. There's a lot more of everyday Russia to explain.